Hello my friends and welcome back. It's Monday. Happy Monday to you. As I say every Monday that you and me were going to survive until Friday, and last Monday somebody commented, Artur, I am not surviving, I am living fully. I'm glad my friends, I'm glad to hear it. We begin today with Joe Rogan. Why Joe Rogan? Because he has said something I completely cannot agree with, and it's so outrageous I have to comment on it. But let's watch the video, he can speak for himself. If you don't know who Joe Rogan is, then he's the most famous podcaster in the world.
Zelensky says Putin is terrified. Fuck you, man. Fuck you people. You fucking people are about to start World War III.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, Zelensky, Joe Rogan calls out the entire nation of Ukraine and Zelensky basically for defending their country. Russia attacks Ukraine, Ukraine defends themselves, and then Joe Rogan, the most famous podcaster in the world, says that Ukraine is to be blamed for starting World War III. This is outrageous. Ukraine is defending themselves and doing it one hand behind their back because they're very much limited in what they can do with the Western weaponry sent to them. Well, let's go on with this drama because legendary fighter and the world heavyweight, multiple-time heavyweight world champion in boxing, Vadim Kitko, has a response to Joe Rogan. And let's watch this one also. I really like the dude. I could really respect heavyweight boxing, and I really like his demeanor of being very calm and analytical.
Joe Rogan, I listened to your latest podcast. I'm sending you this video to let you know that I disagree. You talk about these American weapons being sent to Ukraine, which you believe will lead to the Third World War. So, let me tell you that you're repeating Russian propaganda. Putin's Russia is in trouble. So they want to scare you and people like you. His war was supposed to last 3 days. It has lasted 3 years, thanks to the heroism and sacrifice of us Ukrainians. So you're using the only weapon that Putin really intends to use, propaganda. And this weapon really weakens our democracies. Putin's Russia wants to destroy Ukraine quietly. They want America to stay quiet, not great, but quiet. A great America is not an America that abandons countries that defend freedom with their lives. In short, you see, I have quite a few points of difference. If you invite me on your podcast, we could discuss them like free men.
I do agree. Many great points here. Putin's most efficient export of a weapon is fear through propaganda. And if you see, for example, any Westerner or American or German being afraid of World War III, well, I say it again, fear is a choice. Danger is real, but fear is a choice. If somebody's afraid of World War III because of what Ukraine is doing to defend their nation, then unfortunately, yes, Putin's propaganda weapon, fear, has been very effective. I almost wanted to ask, do you remember the slogan, why die for Danzig? But then I remembered that 1939 was so long ago that I don't think anybody watching me is over 100 years old. Maybe they are, then respect to you. Why die for Danzig was a pro-appeasement, anti-war French political slogan created at the eve of World War II, 1939. So Germany demanded Danzig from Poland, and basically it was Danzig or war. Give us Danzig or we will invade. And they accused of Poland. Danzig was Polish, and they accused Poland for taking Danzig from them. Give it back or we will invade. And of course, Second World War started. The French and Britain declared war on Germany after Germany invaded Poland. But the slogan was, why die for Danzig? Should we join the war? Should we declare war on Germany? Well, now we have the hindsight of what happened. We are at the eve of World War III, and it's not because Ukraine is defending himself, it's because the West is not doing enough. We can do more. We can prevent it. I want to know where I'm from. So I'm gonna take a DNA test and share the results with you guys. Let's go. I chose MyHeritage. MyHeritage is a leading global family history and DNA service. If you want to explore your family tree or take a DNA test and find out where you're from, MyHeritage is perfect for that. Taking the test is super easy. You take out this cotton stick, you rub the inside of your cheek against it and the other cheek also, you put it into a tube, you package it and you send it away. And until we wait until it arrives, here's a photo of my grandfather and check this out, what MyHeritage can do with it. Animate. Whoa, that is weird. Also kind of looks like him. They can animate photos of your forefathers. Alright my friends, are you ready to find out where I am from? Artur, ready to explore your ethnicity? I don't know what I'm gonna find out. Baltic, 65%. I'm Baltic. Finnish, 27. Suomi perkele, Suomi mainittu, torilla tavataan. Satana. Scandinavian, 7.9%. I'm a Viking, yeah? Helvete. For fun. So that's the DNA overview. Extended family, 5 of them. I got a right to all of them. What the hell? 11,700 distant relatives. My family is big. DNA matches, what do we have? You can't view this information. These are my private relatives. Close your eyes. You can go down a rabbit hole exploring your DNA results in MyHeritage. There's so much you can play around with. Buy a DNA kit by clicking a link in the description below. My friends, if you use my link in the description below, the DNA kit, instead of being $49, for you it's only $29. It's a fantastic price. So I got 2, one from my wife and one for me. At this time of the year, my friends, in Estonia, in the Baltics, in Ukraine, in Russia, it's all rain and mud and cold. It's this time of a year where it is snowing already, but it's like 0, +1 degrees, -1 degrees. It's very wet, moist and cold. It's the worst weather you can have, because if you have cold or like -5, the water is gonna freeze and you have dry cold. It's nice. But right now you have this wet cold. This is the situation on the front. Look at it. And Ukrainian troops are, of course, making fun that, hey, new patch arrived. Unpack the soldiers. Let's kick some ass. Or chew bubblegum, but we're all out of bubblegum. Well, they're unpacking their new Ukrainian soldiers, freshly trained. And they're coming out of the patch. Look at that. It's a humor video, of course, but it illustrates the mud and rain and cold. I mean, if you're living in Minnesota or like Germany or wherever you get snow, you know the snow that is not like -degree snow. It is just before it's melting to water, but it's still snow. It's this wet kind of, the worst kind of snow that snows on you. It makes everything wet and cold. Well, that's the situation on the front right now. Even if we watch this video, you can see how the mud is everywhere. You cannot escape it. I mean, this is what stopped Hitler's panzers pretty much. It's the Rasputitsa. You can call it Rasputitsa. I don't know how to pronounce it. The mud and rain season. It's the worst thing right now. If the ground freezes, it's gonna be better for the defenders and for the attackers both, because you can move again. But right now it's the worst. It defeats soldiers' morale. It's such a bad time to be on the front right now for both sides. This is not one-sided. Both trenches look like that. Both fields look like that. Now, my friends, before we go on to any kind of analysis that I usually do, I have to get these videos out of the way. These very strange videos coming from the front. And in this one, we have a freshly made, the most fresh Russian minefield. Mines put on this road. You can see in this video, this is a Russian sapper that just planted these mines. And now suddenly there's a Russian car advancing. In the Russian army, communication is almost non-existent, so they don't know where the minefields are. The sappers don't notify anybody of them. There's no signs or nothing. It's just pure chaos. So the car is advancing. How do you stop the car? Well, he's trying to do it. He's waving them down. Stop. You're about to run to your own minefield. Stop. We just laid them down. The car, of course, thinks that this is some kind of an ambush, not knowing if this is a Russian or Ukrainian. And what the car does is speed up and actually run over. Bam! You just see it. It ran over their own sapper, thinking it's an ambush. We're going, Ivan, speed up. We're going to go through this ambush. Well, a surprise to them. before at the end, another sapper yells. Boom, and the screen goes light. The video is cut just before, but you can see the little simmering of light here. Sapper was run over and then the car hit the Russian minefield. This is all a symptom of horrible communication in the Russian army. Let's see what Ukrainian drones did in Russia this night. Today, when I woke up, I looked up through all my sources and I saw a lot of explosions in Russia. There was another Ukrainian drone attack, and this time an oil refinery was hit in Kaluga, oil depot. And it's called, I'll try to pronounce it, Kaluga Produkt. Kaluga oil product. It's a very original name. Well, the Kaluga authorities said that they intercepted 2 Ukrainian drones, but as I say many times on this channel, for Russians, interception means that they shoot down the drones with their oil refineries. You see, Ivan, you destroy Ukrainian drone with oil refinery. This way, you destroy Ukrainian drone. Yeah, we have a clear-cut video of this oil burning right here. No questions about it. Hell, I'm gonna show you other footage also. There's plenty of it. In this one, we can see Star Wars lasers going up in the air. Of course, I mean tracer rounds of anti-aircraft fire. But the oil refinery is already burning. And I think there's another boom is in another video. I want to show you everything. Look at this one. In this one, we can see the kaboom more clearly. Star Wars lasers going up and boom! The explosion of freedom. Yeah. Well, what exactly happens after this explosion? We always hear, oh, this and that oil refinery stopped working. Well, the plant had a capacity of refining 24,000 barrels a day. Let's put it directly to numbers. This means a loss of approximately $1.7 million per day for the Russians. And not a big number, right? But every day 1.7 million goes away from the state budget. Plus, there's many oil refineries that are burning like that, some of them 10 times bigger. If you add that up, we're talking billions altogether a month taken away from the Russian budget. Don't ask me why, but today I have many videos for you to watch. A lot of good footage came out of Ukraine. In this one, it's the Wild Hornets, of course, but it's the first battle deployment of a machine gun drone. Or it's not a machine gun, it's Kalashnikov, of course. But it's the battle deployment. We have seen them being tested before, but in this case, it is a drone carrying a Kalashnikov, shooting at a Russian assault group. The group had about 8 PMPs and infantry. Everything was destroyed by drones, and this machine gun drone finished it up. It took several bullet hits, as you can see. The weapon itself took a hit right on top of the trigger, and the drone itself also took some hits. It still continued working. It's a really cool idea, and I think it can be effective. Yesterday, my friends, Ukrainians hit an S-400 radar station in Kursk. S-400 is... it's the most expensive Russian anti-aircraft missile system, defense system. The export price is about 1 billion. Nobody wants to buy them anymore since they're not really that good. Supposedly it was done with ATACMS, since ATACMS can be used on Kursk now. The S-400 is a top-tier defense system, was significantly damaged by destroying its radar station. This critical component, designed to protect strategic sites, is essential for the system's operation. Without it, the S-400 becomes ineffective, exposing flaws in its claimed capabilities. Now, I know I'm jumping topics very fast here, but there is a lot to cover, so I'm gonna continue jumping topics. In this video, this happened yesterday. This is Moscow suburb. Full blackout for the whole, it's not even city block, it's a whole part of a city, a certain part of the city. We're talking several tens of thousands of people in Moscow without electricity. Electrical blackout in the Moscow suburb of Kommunarka started sometime before 8:30 p.m. Water also shut off. Time is now almost 2 a.m. and the temperature is below freezing. Now, what does it all mean? It gives us a lot of information, actually. Below freezing means you cannot freeze to death if you don't have heating, and if you have blankets, you can survive for 3 days like that, but it's really bad. None of these apartment buildings you see here have any heat. It's minus degrees outside. It's gonna be minus degrees inside. There's no electricity and no water right now, so there's no way to heat up any of these apartments. It's sometimes hard in the West to imagine this situation, because you can always, if your central heating goes in the wall, you can just plug in your electrical heat. Look, you can always do something. There's nothing they can do. No electricity, no hot water. It probably has been fixed by now, but this is going to be the start of electrical and water infrastructure, the start of the catastrophe of the electrical and water infrastructure. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah, it's a prediction I make. Mark my words, it's going to happen this winter. I've said it in almost any video, but Russian electrical and water infrastructure was mainly built by the Soviet Union in the Soviet 60s, 70s, 80s. This is where it comes from. It's all at the end of its life cycle, because Russia under Putin has never maintained any of them. Soviet Union didn't have to because they were so new at the time. Well, now they're at the end of their life cycle. Maintaining or repairing the systems all across Russia would cost tens of billions of dollars. No way in hell Putin is going to allocate that money away from the war effort. So it's just a fact of reality. This winter, next winter, it's going to get worse and worse. The blackouts, the stop of the hot water heating system failures, it's going to be very, very bad. I would call it even close to humanitarian catastrophe that we're going to see in Russia in the coming winters. But now let's go to the Russian economy, and I'll read you a few analyses in almost every video I do it now, because there's so much new information coming out. The collapse of the Russian state that everybody was expecting at the beginning of 2022 didn't happen. But it's happening now at a slower pace than everybody anticipated, but it's happening. There are very clear signs about it. Let's begin. Another sign showing how dire the situation has become for the Russian population. Many Russians, even when they keep their mouths shut, are already feeling what's happening, and the worst is yet to come. The Russian economy has been so absolutely ravaged for propelling this war to the extent that it cannot do anything else than continue it. But if it continues it, it will only increase the structural problems which caused the disaster to unfold in its first place. It is a vicious cycle which in the end will make the whole economy collapse. Russia, indeed, Putin cannot stop this war, indeed, because the war economy and the pumping billions of dollars into the war economy is what keeps the economy afloat. As soon as he stops that, it's just going to plummet underwater. Russia is not only losing 30 to 50,000 troops a month, but 30 to 50,000 people of the Russian workforce. The wounded are even more of a liability than the dead. The dead you can just bury if you can retrieve the body, end of the story. The wounded will be burdened to the society for decades to come and will require additional resources. Yeah, this was already felt very heavily after the Afghanistan war, where the Soviet Union had casualties in the tens of thousands only. Compared to Ukrainian war, it's nothing. But already that wounded amount from there was felt all across the Soviet Union. There were men on the street for decades without one leg or another, without a hand. It was a liability for every ex-Soviet country, even Estonia. And that was only a percentage compared to the losses in the Ukrainian war right now. Next 10 to 15 years, it will affect the demographics of the Russians incredibly negatively. And of course, the same goes to Ukrainian population. Russia's future is in tatters. It is bleak no matter what you project. But under Putin, it will tailspin to the very bottom, break through the ground and incinerate in the basement. Under normal circumstances, a population would dispose the leadership, bring this war to a halt, and start negotiations in order to save what can be saved. But Putin and his entourage are leaders of sheep and are steering Russia directly to the cliff, hoping that they will be saved by external factors before reaching the edge. It is a chicken game where Russia drives the Lada and the West a Mercedes truck, while Russia hopes that we make peace before the Lada gets squashed by the cooling grill of the truck. I like the dramaticness of this paragraph, but I gotta say, here, Lada is an extremely shitty car, but it is full metal. What I mean by that is Western cars are safe, meaning their outside of the car is made by a soft aluminium melting something material that if it crashes into something, it takes the impact, saving the person inside. But Lada is metal. It goes through everything. No deforming is going to happen in the body. The guy is going to die inside the Lada. Whatever you hit with the Lada, you will die. So if a Mercedes truck hits a Lada, probably the Lada goes through the Mercedes truck, but the guy will die in the Lada. Let's look at another symptom of the crash of the Russian economy and then the state. The Russian bond market collapse is picking up steam. This chart is the difference in yields between Russia's government bonds and corporate bonds, now at an all-time high. With the Russian National Post liquidating properties to pay debts, the largest car company needing a government bailout, the largest property developers going bankrupt, 80 years of crumbling Soviet infrastructure. This is what I've been talking about in every video. This is the upcoming humanitarian catastrophe of the electrical and water infrastructure. A $400 million cost of the war per day. Ukrainian drones regularly hitting Russian oil infrastructure. This coming collapse is going to make the 1990s look like child's play. 1990s in Russia was the worst decade of Russia in almost all of its existence. There was crazy inflation, there was poverty, there was gangs ruling the country, oligarchs, not the government. It was people living in Russia now see signs that were there in the 1990s. They're returning right now to Russia. By the way, my friends, the ruble has been almost for the last week, it has been worth less than 1 cent of a dollar, so over 100 rubles per dollar. In this chart, it's 104 rubles. Putin has set a political order to keep the ruble under 100 rubles per dollar, but they couldn't do it. They couldn't. It's over 100, has been there for a week. The Kremlin is once again using a time-tested tactic, distracting its citizens with dramatic, attention-grabbing spectacles during times of crisis or unpopular reform. The recent surge in nuclear rhetoric is a textbook example. While everybody in Russia is watching the nuclear threat ping pong, they overlook the catastrophic fall of the ruble. This is exactly what the Kremlin wants. At the time of writing, the ruble stands at about 104 rubles per dollar. It's the lowest value since March of 2022, with further decline expected. This is very bad news for the average Russian, as a weak ruble drives inflation, worsening an already dire situation. But they are distracted from this reality by the Kremlin's nuclear saber rattling. Why is Moscow downplaying the ruble's collapse? The Russian central bank is deliberately letting the ruble depreciate to sustain the staggering war economy. The federal budget faces 3.3 trillion ruble deficit in 2025, with another 10 trillion rubles or 1 trillion, out of which 1 trillion is needed for military expenses needed before the end of this year. Just to sum it up, it's a massive deficit of budget. Massive. The finance ministry aimed to sell 4.1 trillion rubles in federal bonds to cover the shortfall, but managed only half of that. Banks are hesitant with sales goals for quarter 2 and 3 at 50%, quarter 4 below 10%. Now the ministry has just 6 weeks to find 2 trillion rubles with limited options. Either devalue the currency or freeze and seize deposits, both at the expense of Russian citizens. Of course, I'll show you the chart also, it's right here. With inflation so high as it is and central bank interest at 21%, and still the ruble is falling. It's stagnation plus recession. It's stagflation is what it's called. In the last video, I didn't know it. I said stagnation to stagflation. You guys pointed it out in the comments. What is stagflation? I learned something new again, so thank you for it. Russia indeed has a massive stagflation coming. Connected to this news, 3 years into the war, and Russians had free access to British banking and British banking, not British spanking, although they're getting the British spanking with the Storm Shadow also. Britain's largest bank no longer accepts payment from Russia. It is really good that this is happening, but I mean, it's what the hell? For 1,000 days of war, the largest bank in Britain still accepted payments from Russia. This is no good. I don't accept that. It's why? But I'm glad it's over now. United States sanctions render Gazprom Bank cards unusable even in Russia-friendly countries. Russian media report that the bank's cards are now rejected in China, Hungary, Vietnam, Kazakhstan, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates, Thailand, Qatar, and even Germany. Even Germany. Of course it should be in Germany that they cannot use them. Gazprom Bank, one of Russia's largest banks, faces increasing restrictions. And to end the topic of Russian economy, the last analysis I'll read to you, I think we have to touch this subject every video. It's one of the most important ones. This war, as every war, is a war of economy, and Russian economy is not doing that good. Ukrainian economy has never done that good. Ever since the start of the war, they have needed Western bailouts to even stay afloat. This is the reality, and the West is paying for Ukrainian state to just function. But Russia is a different story. Nobody's paying them. They're going under. Russia is in a very deep trouble because its economy cannot sustain the war expenditures on the scale it needs to be able to advance for much longer. Even Moscow-based analysts know war in the 2025 would be dire indeed. But don't make my word for it, here's some overview. The ruble has sunk to 104 to the dollar. With exceptions of the brief period right at the outset of the invasion, it has not been so weak since the dreary years after the collapse of the USSR. We're talking again the 90s, the dreaded 90s that no Russian wants back, and everybody remembers it is the worst time to be alive. It was the worst time to be alive. However, because of the enormous drag of the wartime economy, Nabiullina, who is the leader of the Russian Central Bank and who is behind all of the changes of the interest and basically bailing out the Russian rubles at the first year of war, and now he's going to be responsible also for the collapse of the ruble. Of course she's not, it's Putin. But Nabiullina will probably fall out of the window or just, have 6 gunshots at the back of her head with a suicide note written by somebody else's handwriting. Nabiullina has been having to run even harder just to stay in place. The interest rate, which started climbing steadily last year, now has reached 21% and is expected to go up again in December. And if it does, every chart I just showed you will go even worse, even more red. I'll stop it now. The thread goes on, but I think you get the point, and I'm going to continue hammering on this point until we actually see that collapse. Connected to the economy, but a little bit further, is the maintenance. As I said, the maintenance of the heating infrastructure and electrical infrastructure, but also airplanes. Airplanes are a very specific part of technology that requires massive amount of maintenance just to work normally. If you don't maintain them, the clock starts ticking. Your years start ticking down. You have 3 years, maybe 2 years. And now the time is here. Another Russian plane bursts in flames. A Russian SSJ-100 plane bursts in flames in Antalya airport immediately after landing. This is Sukhoi Superjet of the Azimut Airlines. It flew from Sochi to Antalya. We see it all the time. It's not specifically connected to the military, but it is another symptom of the massive catastrophe going to happen in Russia to everything that has not been maintained for decades. The plane industry is screwed. Russia cannot make any more planes, and they cannot maintain them. So one by one they will burn or fall out of the sky. Now I'm going to report upon a piece of news that I hate to do so, but it's the reality. I think people need to know about this. North Korean missiles are fired into Ukraine by the Russians. Now Ukrainians have had the chance to look inside. What is actually inside North Korean missiles? Ukrainians unpacking the electronic of the North Korean KN-22 missile. No single North Korean component. Only the missile metal body is made in North Korea. The rest of the components, especially the chips, are Western. In North Korea, the Western part. How is this possible? On every chip, there's supposed to be a serial number, which plant it was made on, who it was sold to. To stop this, you look at the chip, where it was made, who it was sold to, and how it ended up in North Korea, and you stop that loophole. The West can't do it. It is about political will. This needs to stop. These are our components in the North Korean weapons. It's not okay. Now, after these heavy threads I just read to you, I want to show you a little bit of humor. This is a video from the Russian military, and the guy is peeling potatoes. Look at the style, look at the grace, look at that sleight of hand he's doing it with. This is I'll read it to you. With the price of potatoes being up 70% in Russia, and this guy peeling them for the Russian army, he might single-handedly bankrupt the Russian state. I mean, he is not peeling the potato. He's undermining the Russian economy here. I mean, look at it. You can distill vodka out of these peels. There's so much potato on these peels. Supposedly he's a North Korean, because the Russian guy filming it says that you cannot understand anything of the language and you cannot peel potatoes. Now we'll watch a video that I wanna illustrate the point that it's not a war of Putin, it's the war of an average Russian. I said it at the beginning, months of wars many times, and then I got a massive backlash from my audience saying that I'm a cruel man because this is war of Putin, and average Russian is not to be blamed. I didn't agree then, and I don't agree now. I think it is a war of an average Russian in Russia. What do you think of NATO? A bunch of scumbags. I think we should finish NATO. We're doing the right thing. It's arbitrariness. Why do you think they're leaders of the world? The NATO bloc is a constant deception. To put it mildly, I wish it didn't exist. The kinder you are, the worse they treat you. They'll never be nice to you. Eastward expansion is the main problem right now. They promised one thing, but they do another. But they're all talking about NATO. They are at war with us, surrounding Russia. It is an organization that was created against the Russian population. A useless organization, bastards. America hasn't had a war on its land in a long time. That's why they're F-word. I wish they collapse and they disappear from the planet, that NATO does not exist at all. Well, this is just Russians on the streets answering the question, what do you think about NATO? So, as the point I said on 24th of February 2022, I'll say it again, this war, not directly done by an average Russian, but is enabled by the average Russian. It's their government. There have been revolutions all across the world in different time frames where people take the responsibility. If they don't like their state, of the actions of the state, or the reality they live in, then they raise up and change the government through peace means or through violent means. But they take the responsibility for their country. Now, Russians have not done it. Therefore, the message is that we like the government. The Russian people enable their government. Even if some people in the West say, oh, they cannot do anything, they will be put in jail. Hey, there have been countless bloody revolutions where people have been shot by tens of thousands and still they overturned the government. Every nation can do it, no matter the bloody price. They haven't done it. And it's not like they're not accepting the war culture, the death cult. They are accepting, they're instilling it in their kids. This is a random photo of a Russian kid somewhere. You might say I'm taking this out of context. No, my friends. In Russia, this image is quite regular. Russian kids wearing Georgie's pattern, this one right here, wearing... It's a Jesus patch on the side. It's a Russian Orthodox icon and a full military outfit. And look at this mask also. Nothing more than a Russian terrorist than this mask. It is accepted by the people and it is raised into their children by the mothers. This is the Russian culture. This is what the people accept. This is what they spread. This war and every death in Ukraine is the responsibility of every Russian person living in Russia right now. News came out of the Russian military that a commander has been sacked, a very high up commander, and the reasons are quite funny. I'll read it to you. News about the special military operation, bad news, is no longer reported to Putin because it would make him extremely annoyed. This has been a story with every dictator, especially with Hitler and Stalin, both of them being very famous for not wanting to hear and accept bad news. Putin has removed a senior commander, Colonel General Gennady Anashkin, almost like Anakin, but it's Anashkin, from his posts for making false claims about the progress of the war in parts of eastern Ukraine, according to the military bloggers. The thing is, Putin does not want to hear bad news, does not want to hear about ground lost. And then when generals start lying to him about fake progress, he removes them for lying. So it's a very schizophrenic system. You cannot say one thing, you cannot say another thing, you will just be blamed for everything you do. Z-blogger Yuri Bodalyaka wrote that the commander of the South group was dismissed for systematically deceiving the command of the Russian armed forces and the country's political leadership, while citing his earlier statements that the command of the group reported non-existent victories, in particular in the Siversky region. And this, why is it bad for the army? Because these small non-existent victories that he reported resulted in massive losses for the Russian army, massive convoys being sent in the belief that this is a breakthrough, send everything. Well, in fact, the Ukrainian defenses never were broken and they just decimated the attackers. And I saw many videos about that also. It was just drones striking down on the convoys one day after another, talking tens, if not up to 100 destroyed tanks and BMPs. I don't usually show military maps on my channel anymore, but I do it here, just to illustrate. This is entire Russian advance on the ground of the entire year of 2024. See, when the front is moving, that's where they're advancing, grabbing ground. You can see they're very slowly and methodically advancing all across the front. Well, this specifically is the Eastern Front, where they're pushing the heaviest. But it is this red box you can see down here. It is a very limited area. On the grand scale, the advancement are almost non-existent. Yes, if somebody says Russians are advancing on the front, therefore Ukraine is losing the war, there is truth and false in this sentence. The truth is that Russians are advancing on the front. The false is that this is significant and that Ukraine is losing. It does not say this advancement is so minor, insufficient compared to the grand scale of the land, the front line. And if you take into account the fact that the oil refineries are burning, the Russian economy is bleeding, then this advancement does not show the victory of the war. Connected to this same topic, Ukraine has lost or retreated from the 40% of the land they occupied in Kursk, the attack into Kursk, Russia. 40% of it Russians have taken back. Some people again say this as, oh, look at the Ukrainian losses, they have lost ground so much. Well, it is again not that simple. In military terms, victory is not connected to ground lost or ground gained. It's a Pyrrhic victory. I don't know how to say it. Pyrrhic victory. Well, why? Some people also say Kursk is a waste of manpower for Ukraine, waste of energy. Well, the Kursk occupation, grabbing of the Kursk land for Ukraine was a bargaining chip. I don't know if you remember, but before that, before Ukrainians were in Kursk, there was a lot of talk in the West about ceasefire and peace and negotiations. Immediately after that, this talk stopped. Russia does not and cannot talk and make any kind of deals before they take back all of Kursk. So they're forced to take it back. Russians have already sent 100,000 plus troops into Kursk Oblast. This is 100,000 plus troops away from other Ukrainian fronts. Forcing Russians to send such an amount of troops to just take back their own ground and territory, which is not even strategically important, is a massive victory for the Ukrainians. In Kursk, 10,000 plus Ukrainian troops are holding in position over 100,000 Russian soldiers. That was the goal of it, and they're succeeding with it. Still, they're forcing Russians to take back this Kursk land by sending these men to their deaths. In Europe, if you're watching this from America, then we had this very influential politician in Europe, Angela Merkel, who was the leader, the chancellor of Germany for a long, long time. And we are living right now in her legacy. It's not like she only did stuff in Germany. What she did, her decisions, her policies affected all of European Union and the European and Russian relationships, also Estonia, Finland, everybody here. And right now, the situation we are in is her legacy. She kept Ukraine from NATO to appease Russia. She blocked arming Ukraine after 2014 while claiming to buy them time. She oversaw Nord Stream 2 while enriching Russia through Nord Stream 1. She led the Minsk Accords despite Russia's repeated violations. That is Merkel's legacy, disastrous for Europe. That woman is responsible for the reality we are in right now. She's the one that set the groundwork for the German-Russian friendship that basically gave away all of Germany's strength to the Russians by just being extremely addicted to Russian gas and oil. And also it was Gerhard Schröder before Merkel. Those two persons responsible for the reality we're right now in. And this started in the 90s and the early 2000s. This is where the seeds were sown in Europe and in Germany at the leadership of European Union for the reality we are in now. They gave away our security to Russians. They decided to be addicted to the Russian gas and oil. And now, my friends, I'm gonna do what I do in every video. I will butcher some Buy Me a Coffee monthly members with my Estonian pronunciation. In Estonia, we pronounce words, usually how we read them, almost always the same time. So I'll just read your Western names and they're gonna sound hellish. Before that, of course, I want to say thank you to MyHeritage for sponsoring today's video. Their link is in the description below. Let's go. Jon on Susanne Tennesse USA. Kiles Kodorf, Paisi Kupeta, Mikhail and Linda, Peter. Thank you to these 5 people. You guys are the foundation of this channel. If you like what I do, become a monthly member of Buy Me a Coffee. Link is in the description below. Until my next video, my friends, which will be on Wednesday, so be sure to be back. Slava Ukraini, and bye-bye.